Could you share with us some, how would someone experience the event? Who is it for?
Let's start with the word because it's a strange word in English, and I'm sure it is strange in most languages. It comes from the ancient Greek. It was actually a philosophical concept that Aristotle explored, and it really translates to life well lived or human flourishing. So when I was thinking of the concept, I was like, well, America right now, and really the whole world, but in particular America, is suffering from an epidemic of preventable disease.
Sean, now you organized the event and you're exposed to a lot of people in this space. And I'll be wondering, what's something that you personally are very excited about right now in the entire, however we want to call it, right? Wellness, health, space.
I guess for me, just one trend that I see throughout wellness is for group wellness activities and for combining that element of community. Like you look at Othership, or, you can look at all these other businesses that are popping up in the States, and social wellness clubs. Bathhouse is another one. There's so many of these things that are popping up that really are bringing people together around wellness. So I love that trend. I think we're part of that trend. I think there are many other businesses doing just incredible things in that, group fitness and group wellness path.
Welcome to Be Well. Today I'm joined by Sean Hess, founder and CEO of the Eudēmonia Summit and previously co-founder of Wanderlust, one of the world's most recognized experiential wellness brands. Eudēmonia is a science-backed health and wellness summit, bringing together physicians, founders, investors, and some of the biggest names in the industry. And Sean, it's great having you here on the show today. I really appreciate your time. And maybe before talking about Eudēmonia explicitly, I'll be very curious to hear a couple of words about your background. Would you like to introduce yourself briefly to the audience?
Sure. Thanks for having me, Toby. I have an Austrian dad and an American mom, and who they met in Europe in the late 60s, came over here in the US, and I was born here and raised here, though I spent a lot of time over in Europe over the years. Like many people, didn't really know what I wanted to do in life and ended up going to law school and practiced as a lawyer for a couple of years before quitting that job, starting a music company and record label, which I ran with my business partner and friend, Jeff Krasno, for many years until we settled on the idea to launch Wanderlust Festival, which was really an amalgamation or merger of a music festival with a wellness retreat. And that became a very successful brand that scaled really all over the world. I think at our peak, we had 65 events in 20 countries in a single year. So it became quite a big concern. It was really the original concept of a wellness festival. And I sold that company at the end of 2022. And I started Eudēmonia, which is what I do now. So hopefully that's enough background for the moment.
Amazing. No, that's my job now to follow up on a couple of things. And I really impressive background, right? From law school and lawyer and conventional pathway or trajectory towards, I know that you just mentioned it, that you were in the music business and now in the wellness business. It's really, really impressive, right? Maybe
Or
before
crazy.
moving,
Yeah.
crazy. Maybe before moving more into the question, what brought you into the wellness space, I'll be wondering what brought you, let's say, into the music scene, or what brought you away from the conventional, I go to law school and I work at a law firm trajectory, if I may ask?
Yeah. Well, a few different things. I had always been passionate about music and played music. I was a guitar player and had been in, many ill-fated and unsuccessful bands during my younger years. And but that led to a passion for music. And eventually, I guess, if you can't be a musician, you can help support musicians. So that became the way I thought about it. And I really was looking for a change. The law thing, I would say that there are incredible tools. Many of the intellectual frameworks, I think, still influence how I think today. But as a profession, I found it to be really a grind. And, I looked around one day and saw many of the partners who were sort of my mentors were people that I just realized I didn't want their life. And when you realize that, you realize you have to do something else different. So around that time, I had, my friend Jeff had also opened a recording studio in Lower Manhattan in New York. And I had helped to set it up and even invested a little money at the time. And we just decided, we had been talking for many years, I think over a late night beers, about one day becoming, opening and starting a record label and or artist management company. And we really just decided to do it. And I would say there wasn't a lot of forethought, nor necessarily a lot of experience other than what we had gleaned from some summer internships and brief stints working for major record labels. But, we worked very hard and got lucky, which is, I think, one of the prerequisites of many successful business enterprises, and ended up, having a great run at it. And it was interesting. And so I think really it opened the door to wellness by coincidence. By the time that the label was established and the artist management company was established, when many of our artists were playing at these newfangled big music festivals that had come up, Bonnaroo and Austin City Limits and those events. And became friendly with a lot of those people and also became who had founded those. But also by that time, I was a little bit older, sort of more in my late 30s, and my vision for what I wanted a music festival to be had changed. I envisioned it with nature around me and no fences and, a more of a VIP experience. And that idea, while maybe not working perfectly for a traditional music festival, worked very well for when you combine wellness elements, because the nature, the outdoors, all that stuff fit very nicely. So slowly the idea for Wanderlust came together with Jeff and me, and then Jeff's wife, Skylar, who was by that time a really successful yoga teacher in New York. And she was leading yoga retreats. And I think we really just mashed up the idea of a destination yoga retreat somewhere beautiful with a nighttime music festival. And that really was the concept that underpinned Wanderlust.
Amazing. I mean, you're already mentioning it, that Wanderlust was already the, let's say, segue into the wellness world, and now probably more specifically in the industry with the Eudēmonia Summit. Could you maybe share with us what context does one need to know about your background at Wanderlust that maybe also explains your current endeavors, building in the wellness community, in the wellness industry, connecting people in the wellness industry? How has that sort of helped you now in building your current venture and connecting in the wellness industry? Was there a moment where you became a lot more sort of focused on wellness, a moment you recall, or was it more a smooth transition in the music industry that you've experienced?
Yeah, well, I mean, it's a good question. When we started Wanderlust, I mean, I was very much coming from the music side. I wasn't practicing yoga or particularly engaged with wellness practices. I mean, I've always been very active and, played sports and was interested in, and to some degree, having a European dad, who would basically never buy anything that had a preservative into it and always favored fresh and holistic, whole foods. There was some background for me, but it wasn't a great passion at the time. I was much more interested in building a new concept of a music festival. But, over time, what you do changes who you are. There's just no doubt about it. And, first of all, we discovered this amazing community of people, the teachers and the guides and the meditation instructors and the yoga teachers, who are all, not only really interesting humans who are on a path, but, in some way they are, you could think of them as personal development coaches or even spiritual leaders in some ways. And so, you have that influence. And there's also just, I think, the realization when you create a health and wellness event and you see people glowing, happy, and healthy en masse, thousands and thousands of them, that you realize pretty quickly, like, wow, this is a really great way to make a living. I get to do this amazing thing and go to these amazingly beautiful places and change people's lives in a positive way. And so I think that positive feedback loop really influenced me over time. I think the main difference between Wanderlust and Eudēmonia was really just that Wanderlust was, I think, very inward focused and very much on that path of, yoga, meditation, sort of what can I learn about myself? How can I be healthier myself? I think it was less about, what does the science say? What does the evidence say? And what I wanted to do was to bring all of that together. And because many, originally Eastern practices have been proven now by science to have incredible benefits in health and wellness. There's a lot of scientific evidence that I think is really interesting and informative of how we can live better and healthier lives. And so, the concept with the Eudēmonia really was to merge that all together.
Maybe one thing, and then we focus entirely on Eudēmonia. I mean, you mentioned that Wanderlust was really a big success, but you also, I think you communicated quite openly on your socials that COVID was really tough, and you guys sort
Yeah.
of had to rebuild something from zero, basically.
hmm
What did that time teach you, and what gap did you see then in the wellness ecosystem that sort of paved the way to build Eudaemonia sort of later on?
Yeah. Well, failure is always the best teacher in life, I think. And, I mean, Wanderlust had scaled to become a fairly large thing. And unfortunately, the vulnerability that it had was every single thing we did was conditional on humans being able to gather in person. And that was our event. Obviously, makes sense. But we also had a large center, sort of a reimagination of a yoga studio that was in downtown LA. And, all of that went to zero immediately and for years. And so, I think that it gave me a chance. I mean, there's a positive and negative. Obviously, I had worked for 14 years or something to establish the company, and it was a very trying time. And of course, as a result, also income went to zero, and many other things went in the wrong direction during that period. On the other hand, I had been doing it for 13 or 14 years and had been, I think, looking for a way to expand my own horizons and do something different. And so there was this moment I remember. I mean, I came up here to where I now live. I was living in New York City at the time, but I came up to the country like many people did. And there was a time you may remember when COVID shut down road traffic, had shut down commerce, and literally the skies cleared. You could see the air was clearer. There were suddenly more animals around and out. And I had this moment of where it was nature and my own perhaps mental state, what I think converging to some sense of clarity. And it really made it pretty clear that it was time to move on, and not build Wanderlust again from zero, but to actually do something a little bit different. So that's when I was able to, drive the exit of the business, and the brand is still strong and well, and there's new owners based in Australia, and I'm really happy to see it continue and grow. They've launched a whole line of plant-based supplements around the brand down in Australia, and eventually will come over here to the U.S. and Europe, I suspect. But so it's nice to see that it continues on, but it was definitely time for me to find a new chapter.
Cool. Thanks for sharing that. Sean, maybe let's move on and focus on Eudaemonia, what you're currently building. I'll be wondering, could you maybe walk us through what Eudaemonia actually is, if someone has never heard of it? I mean, I have an audience mostly in Europe, and I think you guys are not yet in Europe.
No, no.
Yeah, could you share with us some, how would someone experience the event? Who is it for? Also, maybe a bit more some context about how you guys decided to build in that space. Did you identify any gaps in this ecosystem? Any white space? Would love to hear your thoughts about that.
Yeah. Well, let's start with the word because it's a strange word in English, and I'm sure it is
Absolutely.
strange
Yeah.
in most languages. It's actually a word that I encountered a few times, and thought, "Huh, what an interesting word." And it comes from the ancient Greek. It was actually a philosophical concept. A concept that Aristotle explored, and it really translates to life well lived or human flourishing. But what's really interesting about it is that it's not about happiness per se, which the ancient Greeks saw as fleeting and ephemeral, but actually it's more about this deeper sense of having purpose, meaning, and knowing why you are here on this planet and what you're here to accomplish and do. And so I found it really interesting. I mean, obviously, there's a health context, which is that, if you don't have good health, both physical and mental, then you could never theoretically attain the state of eudaimonia. So when I was thinking of the concept, I was like, well, America right now, and really the whole world, but in particular, America is suffering from an epidemic of preventable disease. And there are a lot of people who just don't have basic good health, whether that's physical good health because of heart disease or diabetes or other preventable illnesses, or mental health because of digital addiction and isolation and many other factors that have been discussed. And so I thought, wow, what a great idea to bring that concept into, an actual event that gathers people and tries to share information to, change. But somewhere in the future, also getting into those bigger questions of, okay, why am I here? And what is my purpose and the meaning and some ways of my life? And how do I find this sense of fulfillment that's deep and lasting? So that was the underpinning of the event. And what it actually is, though, is really I would call it a mashup between a festival and a conference. And there is a wide range of things that you can do and learn. And so the mornings often begin, there's, treatments, there's meditations and sound baths, there's workouts of all kinds. We had, this year, the founders of Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, the Gracie brothers teaching Jiu-Jitsu. We have, HIIT and strength training, a wide range. I mean, we're thinking, imagine two giant buildings, hundreds of thousands of square feet, it takes you 15 minutes to walk from end to end, and about 30 different venues, all of which offering different things. So you have the physical side in the morning largely, and then during the day, you have a wide range of other things to do. There's talks and lectures, and we bring in all of the top medical doctors and podcasters, people like Andrew Huberman and Dr. Mark Hyman, and 170 other people really from all around the world. And that you can drop into and choose what you want to do and what you sign up to, depending on what your personal interests are. So, really every topic you could possibly imagine, from metabolic health to, disease prevention to fitness to brain optimization. It's all covered in one session or another. And then there's a giant expo. So we bring in, this year was about 160 brands. So all these leading health tech brands, ranging from everything from, at home gym equipment to testing to your Aura rings to supplementation to whatever you want to know and whatever products can support health and wellness lifestyle. And last but not least, there's a treatments plank, which we brought in, everything from robotic massage to immortal chairs to hyperbaric chambers to a full body MRI scanner, where you could have a full body MRI scan on site. So it's just, it's so vast. It's honestly very difficult to describe. There's a sauna sessions outside and cold plunges. I mean, it's basically we try to gather every current trend and every interesting human connected to health and wellness in one amazing space, and then really just create a very fun and engaging environment that, I guess like Wanderlust, the main glue of which is community. People come, they have a great time. They're there for a positive reason. They're there for personal transformation in one form or another. And it's just a great community. So we had 5,000 people show up last year. It was really, really amazing time.
Mm. Yeah, I can only encourage. I mean, I've not been there, unfortunately, but I've noticed it. And I mean, watching sort of the recap videos and noticing what people in the industry are posting about it makes you really having some FOMO here. It seems to have been really, really great. People from the industry connecting with each other, but also through experiences, right?
Yeah.
Which makes it probably very intimate, but very, valuable as well. Very close, very, very different as, compared to just an ordinary get together, I would say, right? In the ferry hall, so that it's really more, how do you say it? I mean, experience driven, right? If I understand correctly.
Yeah. Well,
Yeah.
I think, the things to take away for the audience is, most wellness conferences are actually B2B, business to business focused. They're not for consumers. And so the first thing is that, this event is really designed for, people like you and me who care about their health and wellness and just want to see what the latest trend is, want to understand what the latest protocols and practices are, and just also want to go to a fun event. So that's the other piece, which is because of my background at Wanderlust and in the music industry. I mean, this was built from the ground up to be both informative and fun. And I think the vast majority of conferences, let's be honest, they're built to be informative, but they're not really built to be super fun. They don't have festival elements and arts and music, and they don't have, just the crazy level of experiential activations and things you can do physically yourself, that we do. So I think the whole idea is really, first of all, that. But because everyone from the industry, so many brands are there, and because it's such a large gathering. It's like maybe South by Southwest, to use an analog. It started to really attract a lot of people who are in the business of health and wellness. So those are the CEOs and the founders and the investors and the people who come, who, because they want to know what's going on and what new companies are popping up and what consumer trends are doing and what's exciting. So we have that going on too. So it really creates I think a really rich, connected audience between, consumers. And then some of the other things I'll just say is that, the audience really has, I think of it as having 3 or 4 components. There's what I think of as OG wellness. That's very much the Wanderlust audience of people who are, original, deep into yoga, meditation, wellness practices, healthy eating, all of that. There's biohackers, which is more science driven, tend to be younger, more about self-optimization. There's a large component of what I think of as sort of refugees from conventional medicine. So these are medical doctors and nurses and people who are trained in conventional medicine, but who are disenchanted with the lack of focus on prevention and the things we can do to not get sick as opposed to treating people who are sick. So there's a large, 15 or 20% of that set coming in. And then the final thing I think might be, health span enthusiasts or longevity enthusiasts. So people who are maybe aging or thinking about healthy aging and how they can live as long as possible, but obviously as well as possible for as long as possible. So, those are groups that actually don't always come together. Biohackers have their own events, but they haven't necessarily merged with, the meditation crowd or, and I think, and medical doctors, I think have, in some ways, many of them have avoided wellness conferences because of a worry that there's too much anti-science being taught or non-evidentiary claims being made. And so we've really tried to work on making it a space that can bring everyone together and we can all learn from each other.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's an interesting aspect. And I'll ask some questions later also about the entire ecosystem or industry as a whole, right? Because it's so fragmented, so many sort of groups there, as you mentioned, right? The biohackers, the wellness guys, and other people. It's very, very much. Then you have the traditional healthcare system. But I'll ask a question about that later because I think it's very relevant. I'll be very also wondering what your take is on that. Maybe another question about the event in particular. I mean, you just said, I think you had 5,000 attendees, right? At the last event. So, I mean, you also have great speakers, as you mentioned, great brands out there. How do you, what's your thoughts on also curating the right people, the right speakers, right brands for that festival? What makes someone maybe a good fit for Eudēmonia? What's something you guys look for when curating your partners at this point there?
Yeah. It's a big question. My wife, Karina, does most of the programming, but we obviously collaborate and spend a lot of time thinking and talking about it. I think there's a lot of different pieces. I mean, we are... I can give you some of the factors. I mean, first of all, the challenge is that the conceit of the event, and obviously no one can really do that, but the conceit of the event is that we are covering human health holistically. So we are covering, every aspect, whether mental health, physical health, and obviously that can't be done because it is such a massive, massive body of evidence that you do. But we really try to cover an incredibly broad thing. So first, then that means you need to pull experts from so many different areas of health. We are, of course, focusing on the hot button issues that are most intriguing to consumers at the time, and whether that's, gut health or metabolic health or psychedelics for depression or, so there is some emphasis, I suppose, on current trends in that way, but there's still right there, you need 100 plus experts to even, achieve that goal. Then I would say there's a consideration of following. And I want to be clear about that. It's not because you have a large following that we book you, but if you have a large following and you are a significant voice in the ecosystem, then we love to consider that, because what we're trying to do is to not only bring experts together who have large audiences, but to break through the algorithmic wall that most people live in. So, there are a lot of wellness figures, and I don't want to name names here, but who, they often make some claims that are incredibly interesting and valuable, and they may say some things that I think are very scientifically questionable. If you don't have some people like that at your event, their ideas, most of their audience sits in the online algorithmic firewall, and they never really even get exposed to people who disagree or people with other ideas. So our idea is to really put people together in a forum that inspires collegial and respectful debate. And it's not structured as a debate, but we really want to pair, if we know that expert X says this one thing, which, may have some evidence, but maybe isn't proven, and expert Y disagrees with that. Those are the kind of pairings we like to have on our stages. And I do think that actually makes us quite different than that happens a lot at actually expert and scientific conferences, but it doesn't happen a lot at consumer conferences. Consumer conferences are often the person on the stage is actually there for free because they have something to sell you. And we really tried to do away with that. We really have we have sponsors, of course, but the experts are paid at our event. And we really try to make sure that they know that the main stages are not a forum for selling any products you're attached to, but actually a forum to talk about what is true and what the evidence shows and what best practices are for optimizing human health. So that's another whole factor of like curating people with differing opinions that are grounded in fact or grounded in evidence. One of the things you learn is just so much of this space is early stage. I mean, my take on it, if I can just, continue to ramble at you for a second,
Absolutely.
is that,
Absolutely.
most people who are in the business of health and wellness are there for the right reasons. They're there because they believe deeply in something and they believe that it can be transformed to help other people. So the motives are generally good, but when you get into the commerce of it, and once you develop a product and that product you believe in, the temptation, first of all, there's audience capture that happens in the podcast space, but then also in the commercial side, there's just an incredible temptation. You have to market your product. You have to tout its benefits. And that tends to cause claim drift. So what ends up happening is claims get stronger and stronger and more definitive. And what you really learn as you go through this is that there are very few things about human health. I mean, you could say, good nutrition with whole foods and sleep and exercise. Those things we know work. But when you get onto outside of the core of that, there is very little that is proven to a degree that it is unchallengeable. And for that reason, it's really important to be able to have these open dialogues and to not fall, I think, into algorithmic rabbit holes that, lead you to a dogma, a belief that I must eat, 200 grams of protein a day or whatever in order to be healthy. Because I just think that most of those claims just don't hold up, but they are worth discussing. And so that's one side of thing. The other thing that's really challenging is that if I were to do a conference just on sleep, nutrition, and exercise, then that would be a very boring conference. And what's really interesting are some of the new technologies, some of the new, there's so many new areas of innovation that are coming out. And a lot of that stuff, by definition, because it's new, doesn't yet have a 10-year double-blind, RCT behind it where you can know everything about, a cohort and follow them and make sure that the science is gold standard. It's more like, an observational study of 15 people. So what do you do with that? In my world, I think you talk about that, but you talk about it honestly, that the science, there is some data supporting this claim, but it's not proven yet by any normal scientific standard. And I still think you want to talk about that, though, because that's what the cutting edge and that's what's exciting to learn about. So we really have to balance all of those things when bringing in experts. And I think the vast majority of our experts, I think, fall in the line of being very credible scientific people. We have some people that I think are more controversial, but we think that's okay because they're put in a forum where they're also challenged. So that was a long-winded answer, but hopefully that gets you there. There's a lot of thought that goes into it, honestly.
No, it's very valuable, I think, to hear that answer. And I think it's also a good segue to what I want to ask. I mean, maybe for me personally, I started out also, let's say, doing the podcast about the business and health, wellness, also longevity. And I noticed myself, I'm not a physician, right? I have a business background. My mother is a physician, and you always get challenged, right? Because she's, a professor, science-based. When you start discussing sort of certain things, you get into a dialogue, into a debate. And I, for myself, have noticed out of that, hey, I feel most comfortable with the word wellness because I feel like wellness is everything, it's fun. It's the obvious things, right? How do you get healthy food to people? How do you get maybe, your living environments, the way you live into a healthy setup? But there's also need, right, for other, let's say, products. And my question now is, I mean, the whole industry, there's, lots of terms flying around, right? You have longevity, you have wellness, you have preventative health, functional medicine. How do you define best, or how do you define what you do to best convey to, let's say, anyone out there what you guys do? Do you get that question? Because there's so many words out there and people maybe start becoming a bit confused or overwhelmed.
Yeah. Well, I think maybe the easiest way to get at that question is to talk about what the goal is. I mean, there are some sort of underpinnings in my mind of what I'm trying to achieve very broadly. And one of them is this idea of personal health agency, the idea that we are all perhaps the best judges of what makes us feel better and what makes us healthier. And that, of course, you need experts to filter out things that are harmful or don't work. But we are all bio-individual. And as a result, there are always going to be what works for me may not work for you. I might feel great doing yoga. You might be less so. I might feel great, with a supplement. You may not. And that's also true with drugs they develop and tests. I mean, there's a wide range when you look at what they say a drug trial result is. That's like the middle of the bell curve and the average participant. But there's people on both sides of that curve always. And so because everyone's a little bit different biologically. And so I guess the thing that I think of when you think of that world is like, yeah, of course we have to provide a filter. And I think we do provide a filter to bring in credible experts. But then the idea is to empower individuals to seek out what works best for them and what most inspires them and what most leads them down a path towards a healthier life. And that is an individual choice. And I think a lot of people in this whole debate that happened during COVID, I think a lot of people felt, um, in some ways frustrated by the sense that there was a top-down approach telling you this is the thing you must do and this is the only thing that can work, when obviously there were different perspectives. Not all of those perspectives are equally valid even, but there were different perspectives that were at least worth discussion. And so I think the idea is that, if anything, I guess you could think of it a little bit as a health free speech forum, but with curation, with curation to sort of separate out the cranks and the people who are sharing misinformation. But I think that we're pretty broad about it, and I really believe that humans, like, the way that we get healthier is through a process of, it requires some degree of inspiration, right? You need to get excited when you wake up in the morning to make a healthy choice about what you eat or to go out and exercise. And that happens because of community. It happens because of you finding something that really resonates with you personally. And I think teaching people that they have it within themselves to find that, and that they're smart enough to figure it out, particularly when they're surrounded by the world's greatest experts and when they can touch and try and do a million different things in one place. And so there is just this sense that, yeah, we're all competent agents who can improve our own lives. And I really think that's the underpinning of the conference. So yes, then when you talk about it and I try to define what does wellness mean, I really think it means something different to everyone. And so that's why our platform is a platform for discovery, not a platform for conveying specific information of a particular type. It's a open platform where I hope people move through it, meet people that they are inspired by, and change their lives in a self-directed way.
Amazing. Sean, I mean, now you organize the event and you're exposed to a lot of people in this space. And I'll be wondering, what's something that you personally are very excited about right now in the entire, however we want to call it, right? Wellness, health, space, and maybe what's something you feel like is a little overrated right now?
Yeah. Well, I'm really excited. I mean, obviously, I run events, so at my core, I'm a huge believer in the power of in-person community, and I think that what's super exciting to me is to see the effect of being in community on people. Obviously, there's a lot of actual now scientific evidence about, how having friendships and relationships and all this stuff is critical to, I mean, it affects your cortisol level. It affects so many different things. So obviously there's that underpinning, but it's something beyond that, which is that people, I think, when you bring them together, it's, and they become, it's a sort of virtuous circle that people start to meet other people who share their interests. They form relationships. The relationships lead to, I don't know, whether they go for a morning run together or they change their behavior together. And I think it's just much more powerful. Oddly, impetus has to be individual, but community supports individual decisions. And so, I guess for me, just one trend that I see throughout wellness is for group wellness activities and for combining that element of community. And like you look at Othership, or, you can look at all these other businesses that are popping up in the States, and social wellness clubs, Bathhouse. It's another one. There's so many of these things that are popping up that really are bringing people together around wellness. And I think that, that trend to me is super exciting because it, at one level, breaks down the mental health struggles and the post-COVID social isolation. But at the other side, there's, it's fun, it's festive, and it's healthy. So I love that trend. I think we're part of that trend. I think there are many other businesses doing just incredible things in that, group fitness and group wellness path. So that's one thing. I think I guess, look, one other trend, and I don't want to call it overrated, but there's been this whole quantified self movement that's been going on where, I mean, I wear my Aura ring and, I love it. And I think there are a lot of products that are, very helpful. I think there has been a little bit of a breakdown though I mean, if I use, say, Brian Johnson as an example of somebody who's taken that to an extreme, right, of quantified self and everything is measured all the time. I think there's been a sort of shift away from that, which I personally believe is healthy, towards a more, balanced process. Not that you don't have, test your blood biomarkers and you don't have an Aura ring, but it's more that you're not allowing yourself to be a slave to data. You're focusing more on the softer side. And I think community is one piece of that. But, I think people are maybe got a little bit overdone, the idea that you can reduce everything into a hard metric. And I think that, this is sort of the other thing we're trying to get at. There's a lot more interest at our event right now into, philosophy, meaning, purpose, the true words of eudaemonia. And I see that coming through because people, I think, have realized, like, okay, now I'm really fit. My blood biomarkers are great, but I'm still not fulfilled. And then they're like, well, okay, but I've now tried, I've treated my depression with psychedelics or with meditation. But I'm still not fulfilled. And so there's this element to which, I think that people are realizing that, yes, you need to have that foundation of good health first, but it's not the only thing. And so I think that's the thing I always think about, Brian's "don't die" is like, yeah, but what about, do live? It's the same thing. Don't die is great, but don't die. Why? Why do I want to be here? Why do I want to live forever? What about it is that's so inspiring to be alive? And so I think there is that larger question too. So I think that, that's a long-winded answer, but I do think there's more interest in, the softer elements of, meaning and purpose. And I think that's a really healthy and good trend.
Mhm. Amazing. Sean, I'll be wondering, I mean, with Eudēmonia, not sure how many events have you already had? Is it, I think, last year?
Just two.
2024?
Yeah, just two. We're
was the
coming
first
into
one,
our
right?
third year. Yeah, this is our
Yeah.
third year, 2026. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, the question now is, I mean, since launching, how has the reception been so far? What's maybe also the go-to market strategy to get you guys launched? I'll be wondering how everything has been going so far from your perspective.
Yeah, I mean, going really, really well. I mean, it was, I mean, I have investors, but it's a very personal venture between my wife and me as well. And so, it's like all new businesses, there's a lot of risk and a lot of challenge and a lot of nail biting and stress to start it. But, the first year, like most events, we had an incredible response in getting 2,750 people and getting, all the sponsors that supported us, great companies, Function Health and Discover and Rivian and like a wide range of other companies. It was, very gratifying. It wasn't profitable because first year events never are, but, I'm pleased to say that we've turned the corner already in year two. And so if we can continue to grow, which I do think, there's every reason to think we can, I think it can be a really successful and stable business. And hopefully at some point we can then expand abroad. This will not be Wanderlust where I have large numbers of events. Eudaemonia is so complex and such a large thing to put together. The most I could ever imagine is having one additional annual event, maybe in Asia, maybe in MENA, maybe in Europe. I don't know. We're still working on that and figuring that out. But from a business perspective, it's really going great. There's more growth to come. And, my vision is really to expand in place as much as possible before opening even a second chapter. I am very inspired by South by Southwest. It's an event I've attended many times. I think they do a great job combining a consumer event with all the music and, arts and films you can go see, but then also bringing together the industry that makes those things happen in one canvas. And I love the idea that it's spread out all over downtown Austin. And I think we have the opportunity to really do something similar in West Palm Beach with Eudēmonia, which is really sort of integrate the entire city as part of the canvas of wellness. We're working on a few exciting things about that this year.
Amazing. I would also be wondering, where's the ecosystem for this entire... Now, where's the city or where's the place to be for the entire ecosystem, right? Is there one place? So maybe there could be a way to get there, or to create an entire town that is shaped by, or to shape that town into a wellness, health powered place where people know, hey, if I go there, just like in tech, right? People go to SF, or, when politics, they go to Washington, when finance, they go to New York, and have a destination place, right? For people who are into the industry would be something.
Well, it's funny you should say that, because I really believe there's a chance, and obviously it's many, many years in the making and will take a lot of, good decisions. But I think there's a chance that could be West Palm Beach. And the reason is that we happen to be there. And I will admit it's actually a bunch of luck that we're in West Palm Beach. But, the town itself is, obviously it's in Florida. Much of Florida is very developed. West Palm Beach, for various historical reasons, is not incredibly developed compared to much of Southeast Florida. And they're related. Ross, the big, huge real estate developer that's done some of the biggest projects in the U.S. in the last, 20 years, is, Steve Ross, the owner's moved down there. He is passionate about creating, in his words, what he would think of as the Silicon Valley of the East Coast, except for, there is very clearly a health and wellness plank into his development strategy. The town, the county, there's a lot of people that are really excited about it. And we happen to be playing, I think, a very positive role, obviously, in bringing thousands of people there. So we'll see. I mean, I would love to see something like that happen, and the community really designed from the ground up to be supportive of healthy living. And, there's a lot of places that have that anyway. And God knows in Europe, I think you have that awesome by culture and by culture and history in a lot of places. But in the US, it needs to be a little more intentionally created, I think. And so we'll see. Maybe that can happen.
Amazing. Sean, we're closely coming to an end. I would like to ask you a quick question. What's maybe a misconception that people often have about Eudēmonia, or what you're building right now?
Yeah, I think that, well, because the name sounds a little scary, I think a lot of people think, oh, I'm not really that into wellness yet, or maybe I'm curious, but this sounds like an event for people who are deep in the path. And, that's just really not true. We have, not only is it, we have tickets that range from $89 to go to the expo to, $5,000 if you want the Uber VIP experience. But the point is, financially, it's very accessible to get in and check it out and see what it is. And then, on an experience basis, because it's designed for consumers and because it's designed around a festival, it's sort of, even if you're just completely new to this world, I think it'll still be interesting and fun to attend. So, it's not designed for experts. If you are an expert or you're really deep on the path, certainly you can find the sessions and the experiences that will be valuable to you. But I think that, the overall vibe and ambience is very accessible to newcomers and people who are just wellness curious. So, that's the main one I hear.
Amazing. Well, Sean, amazing having you here. Is there anything else you would like to share with the audience about Eudēmonia, about yourself, or about wellness and health? Anything you feel like is worth sharing?
Well, I mean, I guess maybe just that we are on sale with tickets now. You can go to Eudēmonia.net. If you're listening to this, EUDEMONIA.net. And that's our website. And yeah, I mean, we're going to be announcing our lineup in a couple of weeks. So the first wave of the lineup, there'll be many more to come, but that will be, it's always a big moment for us. Yeah, no, I would say that that's really it. I just hope, I hope we did have quite a few visitors from Europe last year, and I hope to see more come. So
Amazing. Sean. Well, thank you very much for coming, and wishing you all the best. And hopefully I can also join sometime.
yeah, I hope so too, Toby. It's really nice to talk to you.
Bye.